Hello YouTube, I'm Tallman Brad, and in this video we're going to learn how to stamp mountains and lakes onto our hand-drawn or downloaded or randomly generated height map. So what do I mean by stamp? Well, normally you may draw mountains by hand by increasing the brightness of an area or by drawing with a lighter colored brush than the ground underneath, and then you may use a smudge or a blur tool to create a gradual transition between the ground level and the peaks of the hills. This works well, but you can get more convincing hills or lakes by using real-world or pre-generated height maps from the internet. I'm staying with the KingGen and Gimp software so that you can try this out without paying for any special software. I'm also going to link to some height maps from the internet, which I'll leave in the description. Now, I don't own these maps and they remain the property of the creator, but for safety, I'll be pulling real-world mountain ranges from Tallman. Now, if you haven't seen the video, I recommend you watch those now. In fact, watch all of the previous videos because I'll be touching on most of those things in this video. First, let's start with creating a basic height map that we're going to add to. Now I'm going to do this using KingGen. You can see here there's the little test run that I've been working on. I'm going to clear all of that and we'll start a fresh one. So I'll go into advanced settings. So I've clicked on reset all settings, so we're back to the default, but there's some things I'm going to change because I don't want it to generate big cities on this map because I just want a basic plain surface to work on, but I want a bit of texture to it, so I'm going to let KingGen do that. So in order to get a plain map, I'm just going to say cities number none, towns none, and villages none. I'm also going to say that I don't want any mountains because that's what I'm going to be doing in this video. And the next thing is just for clarity so you can see what's going on. I'm going to change it to a single biome, which is going to be the pine forest. I'm not doing anything else here, but what I do need to do, and this is very important to make sure that we generate a height map that we can edit, is on the right hand side under miscellaneous, you can see where it says save PNG height map. It's saying no. Well, I'm just going to change that to 16-bit to get the best quality that I can. From there, I go back to the main screen. I'm going to change it to a 4K map just for speed, and then I'm going to say generate world, and we'll have a look at what we get. And there we go, that's perfect. So I haven't got any roads or cities or anything affecting the texture of the map. It's all nice and flat, but it's got a little bit of texture to it. And there are a few lakes, which I'm not worried about, and a few little peaks. What I want to do now is find the height map that's been generated here in KingGen and pull that into the Gimp software. So if I go over to Open KingGen Worlds, the one that I've just created there is in this folder, KingGen World. Open that up, and there it is there, height map. So if I right click on that, I can say open with Gimp. And there it is. And it doesn't look like much, but that is a good base for us to work from. It's already got a border on it and it has a few little features like lakes already. So next we need to find a mountain range from the internet that we can stamp onto here. Now the reason we're using these stamps is because it's just so much quicker than drawing them by hand. And there are a lot of things we can do with the stamps as well. So let's get started on that. If I go onto the internet and go to Tangram Height Mapper. And again, there's already a video on how to do this in detail, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. And what I'm looking for here is to find a nice mountain range. Right in the middle of the map there in Africa, I can see just there. Look at that. That looks interesting. I'm going to export a copy of that, but to get the maximum quality that I can do, I'm first going to hit F11, and thanks to the subscriber that tipped me off about that, getting full screen, because the export that you get from this, the file that's exported from this, is the same resolution as your screen, so this just gives us the maximum resolution. So that looks good. That's the one that I want to use, so I'm going to go up to Export just here, and down on the bottom left hand side, it's telling me that the file has been downloaded, and if I click on the arrow, I can find out where it is. I'll say show in folder. There it is in my downloads. And from here straight away, I'm going to right click on it, the same as I did with the height map from KingGen, and I'm going to say open with Gimp. So I've got Gimp open in the background. So if I go down to my taskbar, I can see there it is there. And if I click on it, there we go. There's the file that I've just imported. And if you look on the top left hand side, you can see we've got two windows open. There's our height map from KingGen, and there's our Tallman mountain range. Now I don't want to use all of this, I just want to select an area of this, so I'm now going to create the shape of the stamp. Now the easiest way I've found to do this is to use the lasso tool, but there's a couple of things you need to know. First of all, let's click on lasso tool. It brings up the options. We need to switch on the feather edges, so make sure there's a cross next to feather edges. The radius, personally, I just set it to the maximum radius. Now what this will do is when we draw our shape to select this, it will give us a softened transition between the actual area we're saving and the area we don't want. Now that works very well for us when it comes to making these stamps. So let me draw around this. I'm going to give it a bit of a shape. I'm going to sort of follow around there, curve around there a bit, curve in like that, something like that. And when I stop there, you notice that I've got the two dots there. I've just let go of the mouse. If I hover over the first place where I started, it goes yellow, and just click that. What it'll do is just complete this circuit for us. So now we've selected the area that we want. We want to remove the area outside of that. So I need to invert the selection from this side to that side. Now I can do that with just a right mouse click while I'm still on the lasso tool and go to select and then say invert. It doesn't look any different. What I'm going to do now, though, is on the keyboard, I'm just going to hit the delete key and you'll see what happens. There we go. So it's removed all the area that we don't want and left us with just the mountain range. But it doesn't stop here. Before you quit the video and then copy and paste this into your map, you're not going to get a good result doing that. There's another little trick that we need to do, which makes a big difference when using stamps. First, let's deselect that. So another right click and then go back to select and say none. And if you have a closer look at this, you can see that we've got some dark areas. Now what will happen is, if you imagine that this checker area is going to be our KingGen layer, so if that dark area there is lower or is darker than the KingGen layer, we're going to have a dip before the mountain starts. And as you climb up the mountainside, some of these crevices may be below the height of the map. So the mountain's going to be slightly inverted in places, and that's not what we want. What we want to do is we want to make this transparent. So all we can actually see are the solid high parts of the mountain, and it gets softer as it gets lower, or in other words, it gets more transparent to expose the layer underneath, which is our KingGen layer. This is the special trick, and if this isn't worth a like, I don't know what is. So to do that, we're going to go up to colors, and if we scroll all the way down to color to alpha, don't worry about what the alpha layer is. I did mention this in the splat file video, but if I say color to alpha, and before you start panicking, let me turn off the preview so we can do this step by step. If you look at the window here, what it's telling us is that anything that is that color will be changed to transparent. Now that's not the color we want to be transparent. We want the darker colors to be transparent. So what I need to do is click on the eyedropper and then select one of the darkest colors on the picture. And now if I turn on the preview, you'll see what happens. It's quite hard to see, but what we're left with are the lighter areas. Now, you know that lighter areas on a map mean higher areas, and as they get more transparent, they expose through to the layer underneath, which is going to be our KingGen layer. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to accept it with OK. I'll zoom back out. Now I'm using Control on the mouse wheel to zoom out, and that looks pretty good. It doesn't look like a lot at the minute, but trust me, this does work very well. Now it's taking up quite a bit of real estate on the screen here, so let's use the crop tool just there, and we'll draw a box around it, but I don't want to get too close because there is data there still coming out, probably out to here, of this mountain range. So I don't want to cut any of that off and have a sharp edge. So I'll give a bit of distance around it. Something like that, that should be okay. And if I'm happy with that selection on the keyboard, I just hit enter. And now we've cut that layer down to that size. To use this as a stamp, all we really need to do now is to copy it and paste it into our original height map. So I'm going to use Control A on the keyboard to make sure I've selected everything that's in this workspace here. Then I'll use Control C to copy it. Then up in the top left hand side, I'm going to go back to our original map. In a previous video, I showed you for pasting new layers that you'd go into the layer section, you could say right click and paste, then you'd end up having to anchor it. Well, there's another way, and thanks again to the subscriber that pointed this out to me. If I go up to edit now and choose paste as, I can just say new layer, and this is exactly what I want to do. I want to paste that mountain as a new layer. And there we are. So from here, I can select the movement button and I can grab a hold of it and position it where I want it to be. Let's zoom in and have a closer look. So you can see there's our ground level. And this is our highest point where it's white. So that's going to be quite a high mountain. If it's too much when you test it out, if you go over to your layer, make sure you're on your new pasted layer, and where it says opacity, all you do simply is pull the slider down, and as it becomes more transparent, it effectively becomes a lower mountain, all the way down to 0 with just a little bit showing if you want, or all the way up to maximum. I'm going to leave that one at maximum, and I'm going to duplicate that layer and show you a few of the things we can do. So I'm going to right click on the pasted layer and say duplicate layer. It's pasted it over the top. So with the movement tool selected, I'm just going to slide it to the side. And with this one, I'm going to rotate it because two mountains identical side by side don't look so good. So how do we rotate in Gimp? Well, if I go back up to the tools menu and go down to transform tools, in that list you can see rotate. Now obviously there are hotkeys for this, but yeah, that's up to you if you want to try and remember them. So click on rotate, and now I can just grab anywhere in here and turn that mountain around so it doesn't look exactly the same as that one. If I'm happy with that, I just hit enter. I might want to make that a little bit shallower, so let's drop the opacity down. Let's say down to 40%. But I might want it a bit bigger as well. So let's go back to tools, transform tools, and scale to change the size of it. And now I can grab one of the corners and pull that bigger. And I can still move it around into position with the middle section. And when I'm happy, just hit enter. There we are. So that's mountains, but how do we do the lakes? Well, we can use the same stamp to make a lake. What we need to do is I'll just zoom out a little bit and pan down. I'm going to duplicate that first pasted layer again. So I'll right click on it, duplicate layer. I'm going to use the move tool to grab a hold of it and pull it to where I want. Let's say it's going to go just there. Because it's going to white, that means it's going up. What I want it to do is go to black. So I basically need to make a negative of that. So to do that, we go up to the colors option, go down to invert. And there we are. Now let's zoom in and have a look at that. So you can see now that we've got the ground level, and as it gets darker, it gets lower. Now, is that low enough to catch water? Because remember, water doesn't spawn by default until it gets to around about 43, 43, 43, if you're looking at the RGB scale. So first of all, I'm going to click on this one here because it's useful to bring up this color palette. In the color palette, you'll see there is the eyedropper there. If I select that, I can click on the darkest area, and what I'm looking for is a number that is less than 43, and it's all less than 43. Just making sure I'm on 255. Yeah, they're all 1, so they are more than low enough to collect water. Let's try a bit higher up. Click the dropper, try there. That's 38, so that would still be water as well. Out of curiosity, let's have a look at this little bowl shape. In the middle of the bowl, it's beneath the water, yeah, and then further over to the side, it's above the water. So we're going to get some interesting water effects there. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm not actually changing anything there. That goes deep enough for it to have some water in it. So we're going to get an interesting and natural lake sort of shape out of that, and we'll see that in just a moment. So let's have a look at our map. I think it's pretty basic, but that should be enough for you to get an idea of how to do it. Now, we've got to get this into KingGen and get it to generate a map using this. So how do we do that? Well, I've shown you in another video, so I'll just very quickly go through it here. If you go up to the File menu and go to Export As, choose where it's going to go. Mine is saved on the desktop in a folder called KingGen, and I've made a folder called Stamps. And I'll save the file, it's just called heightmap, into that stamps folder and say export. Now I've already got one there, I'm just going to replace it. And the important parts here are this section here. These are all the default settings. Automatic pixel format, I'm going to change that to 16-bit gray and then say export. We'll give it a second to do that. And now we can go straight back to KingGen, go back into our advanced settings, and tell it we've now got a custom height map. So I'll say select. Make sure you're in the location where your new map has been saved. So mine was desktop, then KingGen, then stamps, and there it is. And you can see from the little picture there. And I'll just click on open. And I'm just going to hit enter at this point, and it'll just start generating the map based on that one there. And there we are. So I've only got one level of zoom with this one, so I'll push the mouse wheel, we'll have a closer look, and we'll see what's happening. So there's our inverted mountain, which has created a very nice looking lake, lovely textures around the sides of it. And there's our lower one, but we made it bigger, and that looks quite nice as well. The little crater there is good, and this one looks nice as well. But there's something I can see here that is going to be an issue for, well, it is an issue for me, and it's probably an issue for most of you as well. And it's these steps that go on around the sides here. You'll notice in the KingGen world that there isn't any, because it uses a smoothing technique when it's generating its world, but it hasn't smoothed this one. There are two ways we can fix this. The easiest way is to go back into advanced settings, and underneath where you've chosen your height map, you've got the community one. Underneath the community section, you've got height map smoothing. It's on none. If I change that to little and then hit enter, it'll generate it again, but this time it will soften the whole image. Now, I've got to stress that it does soften the whole image. If you are drawing intricate details on your map, like bridges, your bridges will be rounded over, and it might not be something that you particularly want. So let's have another look at it now, and you can see straight away that those edges have been decreased significantly. They look a lot better. There's still a little bit there, but you can also see that the texture has been softened quite a lot. To get a better result, there is another way of doing this. It's a little bit more involved, but I'm going to show you that now anyway. It's up to you if you want to try it. So go back into the Gimp software. I'll zoom in on our first mountain, and we'll test it on that one. So it's control and mouse wheel. And if we have a close look, you can actually see why it's created those severe steps, because I can see it. I hope you can in this video. You can see that there are very definite edges going along there. Let me just zoom in a little bit more. These ones won't be so bad because they're blending quite well, but then here there's very clearly a step, another step, another step. So I want to soften those to make that transition that little bit smoother. So the easy way to fix that is to use the blur tool. Now you'll find the blur tool where it's by default, it's the smudge tool, but if you right click on it, you can see blur and sharpen. So if I click on that, I've changed to the blur tool. And I'll just have a look at the size of the tool. That's actually perfect, but if your tool is too big or small, use the size slider here to get it the right size. And you want to make sure that the hardness is down nice and low, so you don't just completely blur the whole thing out. We just want to soften it a little bit. Now before I start trying to draw on this, let's have a look at the layers and make sure we're on the right one. And no, we're not. We're on the height map. So I need to make sure I'm on that first layer, which was the pasted layer, and we can see our selection box has appeared around it. So now when I try and edit this, it'll edit the right layer. That's a big mistake that people will make trying to work with layers, is not working on the right layer. It's easily done. I've just done it myself. So if I hold down the button here now and swipe across, you can possibly just see in the video that that's softening up. Let me try and zoom in a little bit. You can see this area here where we've got the steps. If I hold the button down and just swipe around, there we go, the steps are disappearing and the whole thing is just smoothing out nicely. Now you can very simply just go around the whole edge of the map if you want to, and take your time, try it out, see if it's worked. It might need a bit more, it might not need as much, but I'm just going to zip around it like that, and that's just going to give us a lovely smooth transition. Now I suspect the reason for these steps is that this drawing is most likely 8-bit, or the height map is most likely 8-bit, or possibly the selection tool when I did the feather hasn't worked at the full 16-bit, it's maybe only feathered at 8-bit. I'm not really sure exactly why it does that, but this is how you fix it if it does it to you. So a quick way to get back to where we are and test this out, we don't have to go through all of the exporting thing again and reloading it into KingGen. So in terms of a workflow, this is a great system. All I'm going to do now is go straight up to File and say Export to Height Map. It remembers what we did last time. It's just going to do the same actions. There it is, going along the bottom, exporting it. I can go back into KingGen. I don't need to change the custom height map. It's already looking at the correct height map. Now, of course, this is going to be the updated version. And all I've done here is turned off the height map smoothing from little to none, just to test to see if it has got rid of those steps or at least reduced them. So let's hit enter. And let's zoom in. Straight away, our lake looks lovely and sharp, all of the details going into it. And if we go over to this area here, it's not bad. I spent more time smoothing that area, not as much on that one. But you can see, I'll zoom in editing, you can see that it has softened that a bit. Now, it's possibly still worth using the smoothing option in KingGen, but I'll work on this. If I come up with a better solution for you, then I'll show you how to do it in another video. Well, the last thing to do is to get this loaded up in 7 Days to Die and have a closer look at it, see what our mountains look like in our lake. So as with other videos, I've shown you how to do this already, but very quickly, open KingGen Worlds, find the one you've just created, right click and copy, open 7 Days to Die Worlds. There are the folders that I have in my game, right click and paste, and then just start up the game. So we need to do a new game, and we'll choose KingGen World, that's what I called it, and this is the stamp test. I'll just put that in quickly so I don't get them mixed up, and we'll say start. Now back in the game as normal, I'm just going to hit the F1 key to bring up the console, type in DM, hit enter, come back out of the console, hit H, and then use the space bar to fly. And then while I'm flying holding shift, I'm going to tap Q to do a little boost jump to get me a bit higher. And we'll have a look and see if we can find where our mountains are. And here we go, I can see the lake. Let's get a bit closer. Nice texture going down to the water. Nice and serrated. And I fly up a bit higher, tapping Q and shift. And there's our lowest mountain. Let's get a closer look at that. You can see where it starts. It's nice and lumpy. Good mountain texture. So that's the lowest one. Now I haven't got snow switched on this, so we're not going to see any snowy areas. So you can just see there's the bowl shape that we had. Now this is the lowest mountain. Let's have a closer look at that. That's worked quite well. It's created a lovely little section there. The texture is really good. I can't see any steps in it. And there's the higher mountain. Let's go over to that one. Go a bit higher. Let's drop the POI on it there. We'll go over this way. Oh, and look at the bowl on this one. Because it's higher, it's made it down a little bit more severe. Let's have a closer look at that. Yeah, very interesting. A little bit of stepping on the side there, but it's not a lot. Not enough to bother me. But I love the shape of it. It's quite natural. And yeah, it's certainly interesting. I think that's a nice, quick, easy way of creating some pretty authentic mountains in your homemade map. Well, if you've enjoyed the video or you found it useful, please hit the like button. I'd really appreciate that. And subscribe if you want to see some more videos. Consider buying me a coffee if you like. Or if you're feeling really generous, you can join the Patreon scheme. But in the meantime, I've been Tallman Brad. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.